Hey, this is Victor Antonio, and welcome to the Victor Antonio Show. This is episode numero uno. Now, in this show, what I want to do is really dive into one specific topic every week. Now, for those of you who've listened to my Sales Influence podcast, you know they're typically between 5 and 10 minutes long. So this show is really about, diving deeper into a topic that we talk about people, we talk about improvement, we talk about performance, productivity, and most important, profitability. So whether you're working for a company or working for yourself or you're a leader or a manager, this show is for you. Now, to kick this off, I decided we should pick a cool topic. And the topic is rewards. Now, when people hear the word reward, they immediately think money. But there's different ways to actually, reward people, and we're going to get into that. And what's also fascinating is that we look at reward as a way of motivating people. We're going to talk about when it works and when it actually doesn't work. And I'm going to get into that. And it's just fascinating. You're going to see when it works and when it doesn't work. And rewards are always in the eye of the beholder, right? Because you may give me money and that may motivate me, but for some other person, it may not. For example, that's not what they're looking for. It may be something else like recognition, maybe something totally different. So reward is in the eye of the beholder or the receiver. And so we're going to talk about, how managers can use, rewards to motivate people when to do it, when not to do it, what works, what doesn't work. And again, the objective is to really get managers or leaders to motivate their team to actually do more. But also, we're going to talk about self-motivation. How could you reward yourself? That's right. We're going to talk about that as well. So let's just talk about the broad category of rewards. We know there's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, right? Positive reinforcement is essentially when you do something right, that is rewarded. When you do something right, like maybe hit your quota, hit your number, fulfill some type of productivity quota, again, you get rewarded. You completed the project on time, you get rewarded. Now, negative reinforcement is when something bad, obviously, is given to you or something happens to you because you didn't get something done. And so the debate is always, is it positive or negative? Which one works the best? And again, it really depends, and the studies are all over the place because it's all context. Depending on the context is when you should determine whether to use positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. And again, I'm going to get into that and give you a specific example, and I think you're going to find it really interesting. So when we look at rewards, here's what I want you to take away as you're listening to this. The reason we want to use rewards is because, in a positive sense, we want to make sure we retain people. Now, think of yourself as a manager here. You want to retain people, so let's use rewards so we can keep people in the company, because we know that if somebody leaves the company, to retrain somebody, get them up to speed, that's a big cost. If you really think about it, not only is it going to cost you money, but the opportunity cost, time lost during that period, can also impact your business or your company. So retention is important when it comes to rewards. Also, using rewards for engagement. Now, what if we could reward people when they're engaged, right? Find ways of doing it to keep them engaged. The majority of people often are not engaged in their job because they simply don't like what they're doing. They don't feel like they're contributing, and they don't feel like they're being heard. They work for the company. They're not working in the company, and there lies the big difference. So how can we use rewards to keep them engaged? And again, last, we got retention, we got engagement, but also how can we use them, rewards, to actually get people to be more productive? So these are the things we're going to talk about. And I think when we look at the topic of rewards, I think it's a fascinating topic, and that will be our first topic that we covered. Now, what I want to do right now is I want to move into, I think you're going to find, we're going to talk about a study. Now, I'll be publishing this paper, and I'll be putting it on the site. Wherever you find this podcast, you'll find this study that we've put together titled Motivating a Team Through Rewards. And so when we dug into this study, we put the paper together. And as we were developing the paper, we realized there's really 4 major types of rewards that you can give your employees or even yourself. And we'll talk about that at the end. The first one is recognition. Now, see, this is interesting. You thought I was going to go for the money first, but no. A big reward system is recognition. People want to be recognized. They want you to know that, hey, I'm contributing, I matter. That's what people want to know. And you as a manager, again, how can you recognize people? And later on, I'm going to give you a tool to do that. But what's interesting is that I want to read this. Researchers found that members of a team project that received immediate verbal praise and recognition perform significantly and consistently better than those who receive praise after the project was concluded. In other words, the word immediacy kicks into mind. In other words, people want to hear feedback right away. It has more power. So good job. Way to go. These are things people want to hear right away. Don't wait till the end of the project that is a month out to actually, compliment somebody. It is continuous complimenting, if I can use that phrase. Here's a stunning stat. 82% of employees think they haven't received or haven't been recognized enough in their company, and that's a big reason for them leaving. Think about that for a second. You're not recognizing me, therefore, why should I stay in this company? I don't feel appreciated. So again, recognition is important. I want to share this study with you, and again, I'll put all the footnotes and references in the description, but let me just read this. This is important. In another study, researchers attempted to increase compliance rate of employees of a hospital who were required to sanitize their hands before and after leaving a patient's room. And what they found out is that the compliance rate, people actually doing it, was only like 10%. That was it. And so they started thinking, how can we increase that compliance rate so more people are washing their hands? Doctors or nurses, how can we do that? Well, what they did is they set up an electronic leaderboard, like a little billboard, that every time somebody washed their hands or sanitized their hands, the sign would flash, good job. Now, my question to you is, do you think that would help? Having a sign flash, good job. Would that help? You got a compliance rate of 10%. Do you think the compliance rate went up? And if it did, what number do you think you'd give it? Think about that for a second. You wash your hands, you sanitize your hand, little leaderboard says, good job. What do you think? Up or down? Surprisingly enough, the compliance rate went up to almost 90%. Think about that for a second. 10% to 90% just because a sign flashed. Good job. That's amazing. It's fascinating. If you think about that, that feedback, that reinforcement was what actually caused people to want to do it. It wasn't money. Like I could pay you probably. Hey, what if I pay you to wash your hands? I'm sure we'll get different results, but that's another study. This one is a non-monetary reward. It is pure recognition. By simply having that sign saying, good job, compliance went from 10% to almost 90%. My question to you as you're listening to this, especially if you're a manager, how would you use this in your business? Maybe there's ways of establishing leaderboards within your company. Or, I don't know, maybe you're a salesperson, you're making cold calls. Would it be cool that after you made a call, some sign popped up that said, good job, whatever it may be. I know I'm thinking out of the box here, but how could you use this? How could you use that immediate reinforcement of good job when somebody does something so they can improve their performance? So, again, recognition matters. It improves performance. Number 2, incentives. Let's talk about incentives. Employees are motivated because, again, when you get an incentive, it's because, one, you've earned it, right? One, I've earned it. You also get recognition from your peers. This is important. Getting recognition from your peers is also important. So if I get some type of award, a plaque for doing X, one, you've recognized me. Two, corporate leaders or the company, the people in the company or my peers also have recognized me as a leader. But also, again, it makes me feel like you're really paying attention to what I'm doing. There's something called the Hawthorne Effect. It's a really fascinating effect. Without going into too much detail, because that'll be another podcast or another show, the Hawthorne Effect basically says if people know that you're watching them, their performance will increase. Listen to what I just said. That's the Hawthorne Effect. If people are aware that you're watching them, their performance increases. So again, recognition or incentives are a way of saying to an employee or a person on your team, hey, I'm watching you and I appreciate you. Let's go to the third one. I think it's, I almost want to talk about money and motivation because I think that's important. I think, when we look at does money motivate? Should we look at money and does it motivate? Going to the third one here, I want to talk about a guy by the name of Daniel Pink. I don't know if you know who Daniel Pink is, but he wrote a book. Well, he's written several books, but this is my favorite one. It's called Drive. I'm going to highly recommend you get this book. Even though it was written in 2009, this book really talks about what motivates people, what moves the needle, and what doesn't. So what I want to do is I want to show you a clip of Daniel Pink, and I just want to set up the clip, and then I want to let you watch it. Now, I don't know if you know what the Dunkirk candle model experiment is. The Dunkirk candle experiment is essentially this. You're given a box of tacks, a candle, and a book of matches, right? And the challenge is to actually put the candle, light the candle so no wax actually falls on the table. Let me say that again. You're given a candle, box of tacks, a book of matches, and your job is to light that candle and position it in such a way that no wax drips on the actual table, right? And what they found is that some people could solve the problem quickly and some struggled to solve the problem. So this is called the Dunkirk candle experiment. Now, the clip I'm about to show is Daniel Pink talking about what happens when you incentivize people, give them money to solve the problem. By the way, let me just solve the problem for you. The way it works is this, is that you take the box, you empty out the tacks, right? And now you have a box. And then what you do is you pin the box to the wall, and then you put the candle in the box, right? And then you light it with the book of matches. So let me repeat it again. If you're listening to this, in case you have a hard time visualizing it, what you do is you take the tacks out of the box. Take the tacks out, right? And then what you're going to do is put the box, empty box, and then tack it, put 2 tacks in it, right? So now it creates like a little stand on the wall. Put the candle on top of that, and then light it with the book of matches. That is solving the Dunkirk candle problem. Now, the video I'm about to show you is Daniel Pink talking about what happens when you incentivize people and what happens when you create a totally different scenario. The video does a better job explaining. Here we go. Let's watch the video.
Now, I want to tell you about an experiment using the candle problem done by a scientist named Sam Glucksberg, who's now at Princeton University in the US. This shows the power of incentives. Here's what he did. He gathered his participants and he said, I'm going to time you how quickly you can solve this problem. To one group, he said, I'm going to time you to establish norms, averages for how long it typically takes someone to solve this sort of problem. To the second group, he offered rewards. He said, if you're in the top 25% of the fastest times, you get $5. If you're the fastest of everyone we're testing here today, you get $20. Okay, now this is several years ago, adjusted for inflation. It's a decent sum of money for a few minutes of work. Okay, it's a nice motivator. Question, how much faster did this group solve the problem? Answer, it took them on average 3.5 minutes longer. 3.5 minutes longer. Now this makes no sense, right? I mean, I'm an American, I believe in free markets, that's not how it's supposed to work, right? If you want people to perform better, you reward them, right? Bonuses, commissions, their own reality show, incentivize them. That's how business works, but that's not happening here. You've got an incentive designed to sharpen thinking and accelerate creativity, and it does just the opposite. It dulls thinking and blocks creativity. And what's interesting about this experiment is that it's not an aberration. This has been replicated over and over and over again for nearly 40 years. These contingent motivators. If you do this, then you get that. Work in some circumstances, but for a lot of tasks, they actually either don't work or often they do harm. This is one of the most robust findings in social science and also one of the most ignored. I spent the last couple of years looking at the science of human motivation, particularly the dynamics of extrinsic motivators and intrinsic motivators. And I'm telling you, it's not even close. If you look at the science, there is a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And what's alarming here is that our business operating system, think of the set of assumptions and protocols beneath our businesses, how we motivate people, how we apply our human resources. It's built entirely around these extrinsic motivators, around carrots and sticks. That's actually fine for many kinds of 20th century tasks. But for 21st century tasks, that mechanistic reward and punishment approach doesn't work, often doesn't work, and often does harm. Let me show you what I mean. So Glucksberg did another experiment similar to this, where he presented the problem in a slightly different way, like this up here. Okay? Attach the candle to the wall so the wax doesn't drip onto the table. Same deal. You were timing for norms. You were incentivizing. What happened this time? This time, the incentivized group kicked the other group's butt. Why? Because when the tacks are out of the box, it's pretty easy, isn't it? If-then rewards work really well for those sorts of tasks, where there's a simple set of rules and a clear destination to go to. Rewards, by their very nature, narrow our focus, concentrate the mind. That's why they work in so many cases. And so for tasks like this, a narrowed focus where you just see the goal right there, zoom straight ahead to it, they work really well. But for the real candle problem, you don't want to be looking like this. The solution's not over here. The solution's on the periphery. You want to be looking around. That reward actually narrows our focus and restricts our possibility.
Now, let me really explain what Daniel Pink is talking about, because I feel like I didn't do a just explanation. When they gave people the candle problem, the tacks were actually in the box. The tacks were in the box. That was one group. And by the way, this is, again, done early on. The tacks were in the box. Now, in the second phase, in the second group rather, they gave them the tacks outside the box. Now, those who saw it in the box couldn't solve the problem, but once the group that had the tacks outside the box saw it laying on the table, as I'm showing in this picture, it was easier to solve. Said another way, when the tacks were in the box, they couldn't solve it that quickly. But once the tacks were taken out of the box and just spilled onto the table, people were able to solve the puzzle quickly. So what Pink is saying is very fascinating here, that if you want somebody to just do some very focused, very narrow type of task, then rewards do work. In other words, money tends to put blinders on and focuses them on the goal. For example, if you're in sales, I need you to call 100 people. Here's what I want you to do. Start dialing. Boom, I'm focused. Incentivize me per call, whatever it may be. I'm focused. But if you ask me to solve a creative problem, like how would I present this product to a customer with different types of problems, how would I do that? In other words, that's a creative problem. You're supposed to think outside the box. So to get people to be creative, you can't give them money. It doesn't work. But when it comes to a rote task, something very simple, it actually does work. So the argument isn't either or. Do rewards work or do they not? The answer is it depends on the task you have them performing. If it's a very simple straight line task, then guess what? Rewards are going to work because I will improve my efficiency, my performance. But if it's a creative task, let's solve this problem. Let's develop a new software product to solve X problem. Incentives are not going to work. And that's what Pink is pointing out in this video. And I want you to think about that because depending on the people you're working with, again, if you're a manager or leader, incentives matter and the context matters as well. Again, giving somebody money just to do something will narrow their focus. So if you're looking for something creative, money is not the incentive. Maybe it's going to be recognition. So let's shift gently to recognition. Oh, by the way, before I forget again, and I'm not trying to plug Pink hard, but again, I think this book is worth reading. Drive talks about, one of the things I like about drive, and the word drive means this. Let me further explain what it means in the book. We have several drives. Our first drive is the biological drive, right? Think caveman, biological drive. We want to eat, we want to drink, we want to sleep, and we want to procreate, right? Eat, drink, and be merry, right? That's the first drive. And some people are driven by that drive. Then, as we became more of a community, we started leaving the farms and the savannas, we started coming into cities, working together, we had to become more cooperative. And so the second drive was the carrot and stick, right? Reward and punishment drive. And some people, again, are motivated by rewards, and some people are motivated by punishment or the avoidance thereof. The third drive, what Pink talks about, is what he's trying to highlight in this video, but it's more accurately described in the book. And that is, the third drive is when the motivation comes from within. It's something you want to do. And he gives several examples of how this is so and shares many studies of why intrinsic motivation will always beat extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic means you're depending on your feedback, your reward systems come from outside of you. Intrinsic motivation comes from within, something you enjoy doing. You do it because you want to solve it. One of the examples he gives is Wikipedia, for example. Wikipedia is an online encyclopedia. You know it. I know it. And the fascinating thing is nobody gets paid. Nobody's making money off of Wikipedia. These are people donating their time to basically curate content, modify it, edit it, correct it, and nobody's getting paid. Why? There's an intrinsic motivation to be part of this tribe called the Wikipedia tribe, and you just want to be part of that. You want to add to the actual conversation on Wikipedia, give your input, and actually make it better. There's no payment system. That is intrinsic motivation at its best. You do something because you enjoy doing it. I'm sure if you think about something in your life, you just enjoy doing it. You don't want to get paid for it, because you derive some intrinsic pleasure from doing that. And again, I highly recommend the book Drive. And when he gets into detail in terms of what causes people to really do more at work, he highlights three things. He says that for a person to be, if I can use the word flow, to use flow as a word, basically says three things you have to exist. The person has to have autonomy. By autonomy, he's talking about people have to be able to make decisions within their job. In other words, people have to feel comfortable that they can say, yeah, you know what, we should do it this way, or I need to do it that way. They need some sense of control, some autonomy, that they can do things their way. The second thing they need is mastery, is they want to be in an environment where they're learning, they're getting better. That's the mastery piece, right? So if I have autonomy, I can do things, and by the way, when I say do things the way you want, we're not talking crazy things, but within the boundaries of your job description, you can do it your way. That's autonomy. If you can learn while you're on the job, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you can learn, right? We're motivated when we're learning, then that creates that sense of I'm learning, I'm growing, and that feeds, if I can use the soul phrase, it feeds the soul, and again, you're motivated. The third aspect was purpose. If I know why I'm doing something, then I'm more likely to want to do it. That's true third drive motivation. If I can have autonomy, if I can be learning, mastery, if I can have purpose, I can see my why, if I can borrow from Simon Sinek, if I can understand my why, those three things connected, right? If I can do a Venn diagram of all three things, that is what drives people. So keep that in mind that, there's different theories of management out there. Theory X basically says command and control, just do what I tell you. Theory Y is more of a delegate responsibility type of management philosophy. And I would argue that theory Y is more effective than theory X. And so again, people want to feel a sense of control, they're learning, and they have a reason why, purpose, why they're going in every day to work, or doing whatever they do, or doing their thing, as I always say. So let's talk about the fourth one. So we've talked about recognition, incentives. We talked about competition. I didn't touch on competition. Let me go back to that one. One thing we often mention is competition good for motivating people to do more? And the answer is, yeah, it is. Motivation is always good, right? We always want to compare ourselves. It's natural to compare ourselves with other people. It's natural for a company to compare themselves with other companies. But at the end of the day, we all know that the only person or the only entity you should compare yourself with is yourself. How good was I yesterday as compared to today? Am I getting better every day? As a company, are we growing? Do we understand where we're going? Are we growing as a company? Are we basically fulfilling the market prophecy or doctrine that we've committed to? In other words, are we going forward? Are we doing the things we want to do? And are we serving the right people? That's really what companies look for. So competition is good. But I want to highlight another study. And this one was fascinating because it talked about memory and retention. And let me read this very quickly. Studies have shown that those motivated to outperform, in other words, performance learning, that those motivated to outperform others had better memory scores than those who were motivated to only gain competency for their own learning. Now, this is important. This is really fascinating. So, if you're a competitive person, your retention is higher when you know you're competing. I'll repeat it again because this is worth repeating. Studies have shown that those motivated to outperform others had better memory scores than those who were motivated to only gain competency for their own learning, mastery, immediately after the material was studied. Now, that's a key phrase there. Immediately after the material was studied. So if you and I are competing and you're doing it because you want to outperform me, I'm doing it just because I want to learn it, mastery. You, at the end of if we're given an exam, you would probably score higher. Your retention would be higher because you want to outdo me. Me, I just want mastery. I just want to learn it. So you would beat me. However, here's what they also found. When tested a week later, the results flipped. The mastery learners had better recall than the performance learners. Now, this is a mind blower because if I'm learning just to win, then again, I'll beat you at the end of the day. In terms of if we took a test or a quiz, you would do better than me. But if we took a test a week later, I would do better. Why? It's worth asking that question. Why? Think about it. If you're learning because you want to learn, because it's something that you believe, you want to learn, it's part of your philosophy. Your philosophy is not about competing. Your philosophy is about getting better, intrinsic motivation to get better. So what this study is basically saying is that you can compete, that's fine, but really it goes back to what Daniel Pink talks about in his book, mastery. That's what you're looking for. And when you study something because you want to get better, your retention is that much higher. Now, one can only guess or fast forward that if you're learning because you want to learn, maybe the immediate effects of you being smarter aren't obvious in the first week, second week, third week, fourth week, fifth week. But think about this, just like compound interest, over time, the more you learn, the more you absorb, the faster you're going to go. In other words, your speed to value, contributing, doing things because you know so much, because you're learning it, because it's something in you, is totally different than a person who learns it just to beat you, just to outlearn you. So keep that in mind, that sometimes we get frustrated because we learned something this week and we feel like we're not being rewarded for what we've learned. The problem is you're looking for extrinsic reinforcement. Keep in mind that it's about getting better, mastery. Mastery over time will beat anybody else. Keep that in mind, right? Because that's where you see the best. Now, I want to show you this. Let's move into the last section here. I want to talk about, this is an interesting one. In this program, I want to also give you some tools to work with. So I'm calling this section the What's Happening section, right? And so we found an app that I think you're going to enjoy. And so I want to describe this app, but I think I'd rather just show you the app. And it's one about, how do you use today's technology to motivate people, reward them? Now, again, keep in mind, when I say reward, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about recognition. I'm talking about incentives. Here is an interesting company with an interesting app. Check it out. Let me bring this up.
Nicole, I really wanted to give you credit for the work that you did on today's presentation. Thank you so much for your ideas, your creativity, your dedication. We couldn't have done it without you. Nicole, I really wanted to give you credit for the work that you did on today's presentation. Thank you so much for your ideas, your creativity.
Good morning.
I think these numbers look great.
We are seeing an increase in employee engagement.
I'm really impressed with this platform. Good job.
Guess what, guys?
check it out. So what I want you to do is go to the website WorkHuman, and you can check out the app. But what I love about the app, again, we talked about immediacy, right? Getting that immediate feedback, and this app allows you to do it in such a way that, again, it's immediate feedback, but also everybody as part of your tribe, part of the company, or part of the project you're working on can also comment and chime in and says, yeah, that was a great job. And that's the type of reinforcement, positive reinforcement, that'll keep people engaged. So again, when you think about the money aspect, keeping people engaged is going to help you keep people in the company. So this is an interesting tool that I'd like you to consider. Just go to the website, check it out. And again, I think it's cool. I think it's simple to use. And I think it's something you can implement without spending a lot of money. So I'll repeat one more time. Third drive means people want autonomy, they want mastery, they want to learn, but they also want to know, why am I working with this company? Why am I doing what I'm doing? That's what people are looking for today. Now, to close this out, I just want to talk about, when we look at rewards, the first thing we want to talk about, again, to emphasize, is immediacy. Don't wait a week, 2 weeks to give somebody the feedback they need. Give it to them right away. That's when they want it. Second is, I'll say, exclusive. When you're giving somebody a reward, maybe it could also be something like in that video, the WorkHuman. Again, what was exclusive about that video, that reward, it was to that person. In other words, somebody tailored, recorded a video for that person, and the person felt like, wow, that was directed at me. It wasn't a general video like, hey, everybody, great job. It was very personal and exclusive. The third thing I would emphasize is, when you're giving a reward, make sure it's worth it, right? Give something that is, people go, oh, that's really nice. And again, it doesn't have to be money. It could be an incentive. It could be a vacation, and sometimes it's something as little as a gift card. Again, it could be a lot of different things, but again, give people something that's worth it, right? And think about, how you would give a reward to somebody without, devaluing the service they've given you or the job they've done. So on that note, I think I'm going to close this first show out. Look, this is our first episode. What I want from you is your feedback. Do you like this format? Do you want me to do something different? There's a lot of things we can review. And so what I want you to think about is, Victor, here's what I want to see on the show. Here's some of the things I want you to talk about, and, allow me to do that for you. So again, let's think about rewards. Let's think about how we can use those to not motivate others only, but also how do we use it to motivate ourselves? And maybe that'll be the next video that we talk about, next show when we talk about that. So again, give me your feedback. Look forward to hearing from you. And remember, rise above doing what you love, make that dough doing what you know. But the purpose of this show is really to help you get better every day in simple ways. Take care.
Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.